Greg.
Okay, we are live.
Good afternoon. My name is David Ruffin, Chair of the North Carolina Historical Commission. Welcome to the March 25th, 2021 meeting of our commission. I'm going to call the roll for a quorum. And as I need to remind each of you committee, as the public at large, that for all virtual meetings, any vote on a motion or an action does require a full roll call. So the agenda, of course, has been published for all members to see, and I would like at the same period of time of me calling the roll, if you would, to also express what we traditionally do at the beginning of each meeting, and that is if indeed we have any conflicts of interest relative to any item on the agenda today. So if that suffices, we will do that in conjunction with the initial roll call. This list is not in alphabetical order as normally as is. I believe it's in the order in which the latest appointments were made. So having said that, I will begin the call. Mr. Dixon, Sam Dixon is present.
I'm here and I have a conflict with the Johnny Holmes High School material.
Okay, in Edenton. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Dr. Denard.
Present.
Okay. Dr. Johnson.
Present.
Okay, good. Mary Lynn Bryan.
Here.
Mr. Reynolds.
Conflict.
Okay. Mr. Noah Reynolds.
Here.
Mrs. Snowden, Barbara Snowden.
Here. Present.
Dr. Lowry. Mr. Morrison.
Present, no conflicts.
Ms. Phillips.
Here, no conflicts.
And I know that Dr. Darren Waters is not able to join today. So I think, Parker, we do have a quorum, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, so now I'd like to move to approve, and I'm open for any motion to approve the minutes from the November 23rd, 2020.
Harry Morrison moves approval.
Who was that approved?
Harry Morrison.
Mr.
I'll
Morrison
second.
approved. A second?
Yep.
Who's yep?
It's Sam. Sam Dixon.
Okay, Sam.
Yeah.
Mr. Dixon. All right. We have a motion on the table to approve the minutes of the November 23rd, 2020 meeting. All in favor? And I do need to call the roll again. Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Dr. Denard.
Yes. Can we make two little editorial typo changes?
Yes.
Sure.
On page 4, at the beginning of the second indented paragraph, the second sentence, and what authority it gives and not if gives. You see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Noted.
Okay. Okay, and there is one on page 6, the second paragraph from the bottom, and the second to the last sentence. Miss Bloom said she isn't sure whether it would be, I guess you should insert, be a jurisdictional question or a redressability question.
Noted. Thank you.
So that, okay. That's all I saw. And I vote approve.
Okay, Commissioner Morrison and Commissioner Dixon, you're subject to the
To accept the friendly amendment.
corrections. Okay, we will. I will read Mr. Dixon again, subject to the change. Mr. Dixon, Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mary Lynn Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Dr. Lowry, Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so approved. Also, the next on the agenda is the 2021 meeting dates for the remainder of this calendar year. And the proposed dates would be June 23rd, September 22nd, and December 8th. Now, they're all at 2 p.m. They're all on a Wednesday. So that's June 23rd, September 22nd, and December 8th for the remaining meetings for the Historical Commission for 2021. And that is, of course, required to be voted on as well. Do I hear any objections or discussion relative to those dates?
I so move.
I'll second.
Okay, Doc, I believe Ms. Bryan and Dr. Denard and respectfully have moved adoption of those dates. I'll go to a roll call, and that is Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Dr. Lowry, Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
and David Ruffin, yes. Okay, those dates have been adopted. At this point, I'm greatly honored to be, for us to welcome, frankly, someone who many of you know from past associations, but has been engaged by the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to lead the process for the permanent replacement of Dr. Kevin Cherry as Deputy Secretary. And at this point, I know many of you, he was also a former Deputy Secretary, I believe, of the department himself. He's been a professor at North Carolina State for a number of years. He's obviously a PhD in history, so he knows not only the lay of the land in the department, but he knows history, of course, anyway, as well. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him at length about this process and look forward to having him share what he would describe as the upcoming process that we need to go through to determine the permanent replacement of Kevin Cherry. At this point, Dr. Jeff Crow, if you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say how pleased I am to see so many of my old friends and colleagues. And some of you I've seen over the years, some others of you I have not. So it's good to reconnect. And people like Mary Lynn and Perry and Sambo and David Denard, we go back a long ways, and Valerie Johnson too. So, and then the staff, I either hired or promoted most of you. So we've known each other a good time. As the chairman said, Stacy Myers asked me to help the commission through this process of hiring a new deputy secretary. And the chairman and I have spoken at length about that. And I just want to give you sort of a brief outline of how I see the process working. And we've got a lot to do over the next 3 months or so. As many of you have seen from the job description and the posting, which went up, be a week tomorrow, when it went up on a number of national sites, which I'll review in a second. We've determined that the closing date for applications will be April 16th, which is about 30 days. So those applications will be coming to the North Carolina Historical Commission, and My valued colleague Parker Backstrom will again be assisting us with some of the administrative chores that need to be done in this process. And then after we've received the applications, I will make a preliminary review of those and choose those that I think are most highly qualified for the position. Now, I don't know how many that'll be. I don't even know how many submissions we're going to get. But as just a target figure, I think maybe the preliminary pool, if you will, would be perhaps 10 candidates. And at that point, I would ask the chairman to reconvene the historical commission to evaluate those 10 candidates. If there are that many, we'll see. And then choose perhaps 3 or so, no more than 5, to interview. I will do some background checks on them and some vetting in the meantime, so that we have a fuller picture of who the candidates are. But if everything goes according to schedule, I would anticipate we would reconvene to go over the potential candidates about a month from now, towards the end of April, possibly early May. I don't know how long that'll take. And then after we have chosen 3 to 5 candidates to interview, then we would set up those interviews sometime in May, so that we can come to a conclusion, a consensus as to who the top candidate is. I'm in no way usurping your authority here. I'm just assisting you. So it's a decision that you as the commission will be making. Now, I have been asked to write up the final recommendation that goes to the secretary when we get to that point. But as we go through the process, it's going to be incumbent on you as commissioners to make the final decision on who you want to recommend to the secretary. So if everything goes according to plan, then I would suppose that sometime in June we would be making a recommendation to the secretary. And then from that point, it's up to the department to make an offer to the candidate and proceed with whatever other interviews are necessary. I know from past experience that in-person interviews are really critical for hiring these kinds of positions. And I just don't know if that can be done with the current COVID situation. So that's something the department will have to grapple with after the commission makes its recommendation. So with that brief description, let me just tell you where we've advertised the position. These are all national sites. Of course, the website for the department also carries it. And I want to thank several of you who helped arrange for us to advertise in these places, such like Ken Howard helped us with the American Alliance of Museums, for example. Sarah Kuntz helped us with the Society of American Archivists and the State Archivist Listserv. Parker, of course, was involved in every step of the way. Other places that we're advertising is the American Association for State and Local History, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, the Historical Society of North Carolina, of which I'm a member, and David Denard's a member, and I don't know, maybe some others of you are members too. The National Council of Public History, the Organization of American Historians, of which I'm a member, and Mary Lynn, I suspect you may be too. And then finally, Preservation Leadership Forum. So when you read the job description, you see that the Deputy Secretary is involved in many of these organizations nationally, as the State Historic Preservation Officer, for example, or as the head of the State Historical Records Advisory Committee. So Archives and History has always had an important national presence in these groups. And so I'm hopeful that we can attract some really strong candidates to apply. So I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes my brief report. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Crowe. Obviously, if there are other questions from the commission members, please feel free at this time. Well, good. We certainly look forward to working with you. Many of them would say again, and I am certainly looking forward to working with you in this regard, because needless to say, the commission has a very deeply symbiotic relationship with the staff, but even more so, this individual, this particular person is really typically our conduit for a lot of the things that we do as a commission. And I think critically important that this be a good hire and the right hire, and we look forward to the process.
Okay.
Again, thank you so much, Dr. Crowe, for sharing this with us today.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, I'm going to turn to Michelle Lanier, who is Director of the North Carolina Division of State Historic Sites and Properties, to walk us through the placement of two markers at the Charlotte Hawkins Brown State Historic Site and also Fort Fisher State Historic Site.
Thank you, Chairman Ruffin. Thank you, Commissioners. Dr. Crowe, it's good to see you again. So we do have two requests that have been vetted at the level of the site on up to division leadership, and also with our acting Deputy Secretary, Sarah Kuntz. So the first one, you've received all of these materials in advance, so I'm not going to go through every nuanced point unless there are specific follow-up questions, because I know that you all have a very full agenda. But the first one references an opportunity shared with us through our department's marketing department section from the W.G. Pomeroy Foundation. They had an effort to commemorate a National Votes for Women historic roadside marker program. And they actually reached out to us because they felt that Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown's work as a suffrage supporter for women's suffrage was really, it rose to the level of commemoration in their program. So what you'll see here is the language on page 1 of this particular handout. You'll see Dr. C.H. Brown, educator, activist, and NC Federated, FED is short for Federated Colored Women's Clubs, founder, helped lead 1920 campaign to register Black women voters in Salisbury. I don't have to tell you that that is really extraordinary because during this time period, the women's suffrage movement often was very exclusionary toward African-American women. So this is a nationally significant marker. You will also note the placement, the proposed placement of the marker, either potentially behind the hedge. When I say behind the hedge, I mean closer to Canary Cottage, or potentially on the outside of the hedge nearest Canary Cottage, which would be a little bit closer to the road. I am feeling that inside the hedge would be the better option for us. This is certainly an honor. The staff worked very hard on it, and I am hoping that we will have your support to approve it. You also have in your materials a representation of what the marker will look like. You see that it's different than our highway marker program. Has a purple for this, the color, one of the colors of suffragettes. Shall I proceed to the next proposal? I believe that's what you would like me to do, Chairman
Yes,
Ruffin.
in the interest of time, unless I hear objection, I'd like to have a motion for both.
Okay, so I will proceed to the next proposal. Fort Fisher State Historic Site and the Friends of Fort Fisher are requesting to install a small bronze plaque in honor of Paul M. Laird. He unfortunately passed away in 2020. He has a relationship with the site going back to the 1970s, and in fact was the executive director of the Friends of Fort Fisher. I've worked with the late Mr. Laird on many initiatives. His family has pledged a $50,000 donation to the Friends of Fort Fisher's capital campaign for the new visitor center, and we're hoping to place this plaque with a replica cannon. It's a quote unquote rifled and banded 32-pounder Seacoast gun. It is already located at Shepherd's Battery at the western end of Fort Fisher's land face fortifications. You also have images that accompany that request as well. We do have the language. Shepherd's Battery #1, home of rifled and banded 32-pounder gun, quote unquote, Loud Paul, named in appreciation and memory of Paul M. Laird, founder and executive director of the Friends of Fort Fisher, has his years of service 2008 to 2018, dedicated in 2021 and sponsored by Kay Laird, Matt Laird, Ben Laird, and Warren C. White, MD, and Fort Fisher State Historic Site. It will replace an older plaque, which honors the Military Order of Stars and Bars. The visual iconography of the Military Order of Stars and Bars has proven to be troublesome in terms of, because it does include references to Confederate flag, iconography. And so I just wanted to, alert you all to that as well.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Any questions or discussions about these two proposed plaques or markers?
I move approve.
Do I hear a motion? Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Bryan. Has moved. Do I hear a second that we adopt or accept, approve?
I'll second.
Dr. Denard has seconded, I believe, so we'll move to a roll call. And this is, of course, to approve the placement of markers at the Charlotte Hawkins Bryan State Historic Site and the Fort Fisher State Historic Site, as described by Director Lanier. Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Dr. Denard.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bryan.
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Snowden.
Yes.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. David Ruffin, yes. Thank you very much, Michelle. Next, we turned to the Director of Historical Resources, of course, our friend Ramona Bartos, and she will describe what is before us. I think as much as anything, if I'm not mistaken, Ramona, correct me if I'm wrong, is more open for any feedback of the Historical Commission rather than a kind of up or down decision, as I understand that. But I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, this, of course, has to do with the changes being suggested by local officials, county commissioners, I believe, in Chowan County, to reconfigure some of the original landscape or the campus, if you will, of John A. Holmes High School in Edenton.
And do we need to vote on my recusal, or can I just?
I think my thought is, and please either Phil or Karen chime in, I think just the fact that you suspend from discussion or votes would be sufficient.
Perfect.
We don't need a vote on the.
Okay. 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 So Ramona.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm very pleased to see everyone this afternoon. Appreciate your time. Mr. Ruffin, you are indeed correct. This is a North Carolina General Statute 121-12A case, which requires the review and comment by the North Carolina Historical Commission. And it is indeed regarding changes, a demolition, new construction proposed for John A. Holmes High School, which is located in the Edenton National Register Historic District. And as a result of it being listed in the National Register, a North Carolina state grant, which is a North Carolina Department of Public Instruction needs-based grant, is a $15 million grant with a local match of $5 million. That is for the funding of the new construction. And at this point, earlier this month, the Edenton-Chewan County School Board voted unanimously to build a new administration and classroom building. We've provided everyone with maps, so I won't share the screen or any of that. But the proposal is to demolish that existing central portion of the school and move the school up to the northwest on that same tract, which would also bring about relocation of a very interesting individually listed Boy Scout hut. And you've seen some photographs of that as well. It's a rustic building. It's also very important, I understand, in the community as well. I believe it, I think we can all agree that there's been a very extensive public engagement process that was an effort to talk about what do we do with the Boy Scout hut, as well as how should the new school / administration building be designed so that it is sensitive to its location and the prior school's design. So the materials, we've provided all of those to you, but with our staff's review, the State Historic Preservation Office staff review, we believe that the proposals that the school board have so far come up with, which is one, to relocate and rehabilitate the Boy Scout hut, just frankly scoot it a little bit to not quite as far away. It would still be on the same tract of land. It will continue to be used by the public. The town green space would be maintained, and they also plan on incorporating design elements of the current school on the front elevation, and then they're going to reference some local building forms on the back. We believe that is a very good effort and would meet what we would like to see in terms of mitigation for the loss of the earlier school. One other thing that we'd like to recommend for the commission to consider is that the school board thoroughly document, which is oftentimes what we ask of applicants, document the high school and the Boy Scout hut prior to the demolition of the school and then the move of the hut, and then file them with our office. So we have a permanent record of how they were at this point in time. And Mr. Fagan has indeed indicated that we're just looking for feedback from the commission. So at this point, I'm going to take some notes along with our colleague Parker Backstrom. We would need your comments and thoughts so we can put those together in a letter back to the school board.
But that doesn't require motions or any formal action in that regard. It's mainly commentary. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding. Mr. Fagan, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yes, I think your statutory duty is to provide advice for any of the undertakings, and I believe that's traditionally been done in the form of solicitation of comments, and then staff put those together in a letter to the requester.
I have a question that's probably more broader by far than just the John A. Holmes High School issue. And it's really because of all the work that goes on by staff leading to, recommendations for like national historic sites and registration ads and all that. And my question is, once a local entity like a county commissioner or even a city council for that matter proposes a rezoning, is all of that a previous designation just kind of at that point at risk? Or are there other steps that a local entity would need to go through to effectively overturn or modify, if you will, what had been designated a historic site or his, historic designation, I guess.
I'll take a swing at that if that's all right. It depends on what particular law is being implicated, Mr. Ruffin. If it is a strictly local matter, there may be some local preservation commission activities that need to happen, which would be outside of the purview of this commission in particular. If it is state or federal funded, there could be state laws such as this one implicated. If it is a federal, what we would call undertaking, meaning it's funded, approved, permitted by the federal government, that goes under what's called the Section 106 process. And to answer your question, it depends on sort of which slot you're going to. That is part of the calculus, if you will, especially for the state and federal particularly, to see what effect it will have on the National Register resource. Our state law is limited only to that which is actually listed in the register. The federal law is a little bit more expansive and includes whether or not something is eligible for the register as well as listed. But you are correct in saying that some activities can indeed affect whether or not something continues to have the aspects that brought it to the National Register. This is part of a larger district. This is not, the Boy Scout hut is individually located or listed, but the school itself is part of a larger district. So I don't know that I answered your question exactly.
No, you did.
But
It's not a simple yes or no.
no, it's correct. Correct.
You just, I suspected that. I just needed you to confirm it.
Yes, sir. Part of the design, I think, and purpose of these laws is to try to protect the status of those designations moving forward. Because what I think we're always trying to do, a great deal of what the Preservation Office is geared towards is trying to balance out the preservation of the past with the continuation of the present into the future.
Great.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Perry Morrison. Ramona, the report indicates near the bottom about maintaining the capital T town, capital G green space.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if that was the front yard. I know that they've obviously got a courthouse green at Edenton. This is not that. This will be farther down Broad Street.
Mm-hmm.
But was that an area where historically things took place? Why is it capitalized?
I want to say if Mr. Dixon weren't in a position where he couldn't comment, he could probably give us a fuller explanation. Perhaps he could, just in the sense of confirming what I believe is that, yes, all kinds of things have happened there, and it's plays an important role.
This was a laid out, platted town common, so people grazed cows and had band marchings there and things. I mean, so activities occurred for over 300 years on it. Yeah. And it's kind of been whittled away gradually by public things being put on it. And so I think that one of the victories in this was keeping some of that space open.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we've provided a plat as well, or a design plat that shows some of what is contemplated in terms of landscaping. It's really, the new school will occupy a similar axis and so forth as the current school, which I think is a very good thing in terms of how it relates to what's there landscape-wise.
Right.
And Mr. Chairman, I may have misunderstood your previous question. The commission's role is just to serve as an advisory role in this matter under 121.12a. I'd still suggest that you take a motion and a vote to send the letter, just so it's clear that the commission has acted and fulfilled their responsibility.
Well, it is in that regard that kind of begs the question, Mr. Fagan, how detailed would the motion need to be in terms of the content of the letter? That's the concern I have. Is that needing to be ferreted out in this meeting, or is that something we could just give staff some?
I believe there typically have been motions that delegate to staff the content of the letter, as long as the commission has generalized their thoughts and advice.
Okay, fair enough.
Harry Morrison will make a motion that we send a letter consistent with the staff recommendations as to this matter.
Valerie Johnson, I second that motion.
Commissioner Morrison and seconded by Commissioner Johnson, to the degree that we would effectively empower the staff to send a letter and to include commentary, if you will, or highlights of staff research. Is that a fair
Yes, it is.
characterization? Okay. All in favor, please respond. Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
and Mr. Ruffin, yes. Good. Thank you very much, Ramona, and I presume we will be privy to that letter at a
Yes,
subsequent
sir.
date.
We will prepare that promptly. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we move to what is often a traditional part of our agenda, and that is accessions and deaccessions. And I'm going to have the honor, of course, to introduce a standby for us, Sarah Kuntz, who's state archivist, but she's also director of the Division of Archives and Records, and is actually performing the role of interim deputy secretary following Kevin Cherry's resignation. So, Sarah, if you will.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Ruffin.
And
Sarah Kuntz.
excuse me for interrupting you. Please excuse me. But again, in the interest of time, unless we hear no objection, we'd like to have this kind of looked at in one group in terms of motions of accepting the sessions and then a motion accepting the recommended deaccessions. We have two items, which we'll have to have two roll calls on in the agenda, but at least on the first one, which is more of a general traditional list, Sarah, walk us through those.
Sure thing. Again, I'm Sarah Kuntz from the State Archives, and I hope you all had a chance to look at the packet that was provided to you with the accessions and deaccessions from the Office of Archives and History Acquisition Committee. And as Chairman Ruffin said, I'll just quickly run through the accessions. We have accessions today from the Museum of History, the Mountain Gateway Museum, the Maritime Museums, and historic sites. So the Museum of History is asking to accession an original painting by a former inmate at Central Prison, of Central Prison itself, which is fairly unique. And then there's a series of 3 paintings, which consist of 2 portraits and a coat of arms related to the Reverend John Blacknell that came over to North Carolina to Edenton as a minister. So it's him and his son in a painting, and then their coat of arms. And there's a very interesting story along those lines about him finding himself in trouble in North Carolina for marrying a couple of mixed race and having to leave North Carolina for a little while after he was fined for that activity. And as the museum documented, they have very few 18th century portraits in their collection, as well as no clergy portraits from this time period. So this would be a nice acquisition. So jumping from that time period to the modern times, the next item on their list for acquisition was a t-shirt quilt, which represents also a new type of thing for the museum, something reflecting more modern projects. And they don't have any t-shirt quilts yet. And along with those quilts are included some bumper stickers, and yeah, that's it, bumper stickers and the quilt that go along with that story from Watauga County and a school smoking cessation program. Next up are some materials that were collected around the COVID-19 collecting that the museum is undertaking, and the archives is doing a parallel piece. These include some signs from Holly Springs about how people are to behave in public spaces. So those were actually used signs. And then, of course, a very adorable sign from the Holly Springs Fire Department where they are using their mascot to document how to wear a mask. And then along with that, some t-shirts from the Holly Springs Salamanders, and those reflect their anticipated season and then their lost season in 2020. So those would be also documenting COVID-19 times in North Carolina. Following that, there are some postcards to be used in various exhibits that are coming up. The Sanford Armory, the Gherkin's Tavern from Smithfield, both with the stories behind them and what they're documenting in North Carolina. And then a donor has provided a map from his use when he was an Army helicopter pilot in Vietnam. He's already donated his uniform, so this would be a complimentary piece to that and could be used in an upcoming exhibit answering the call. And then finally, I hope some of you saw this story in the News and Observer, but a very rare piece, an actual cross that the Klan had put on Judge Samuel Preetlow Winborn's yard and set it afire before he put it out in 1965. So this represents a very rare and good thing to add to the collections. I believe they documented that there's only 2 other ones in existence that were like this and out of state. So that's the Museum of History. Mountain Gateway Museum has a Mountain Dell purse from the Terry Company in Asheville. So that's representing a local business and fashion from that time period. That's a great thing for their collection. The Maritime Museum System has a couple of items related to Blackbeard and popular culture, including a coffee bag and a bottle of wine. I guess Blackbeard sells all kinds of things. And then they have a series of photos associated with shipwrecks, the shipwreck Merlot and the Robert McCurdy shipwreck and folks on board that ship, and a couple of boat models to add to their collection, which they don't have any of those at their Hatteras location. And then a map of the Outer Banks and a map of the Lower Cape Fear that also would be important additions to their collections. And then finally from that system, the U.S. Coast Guard Challenge coin, which was coming from Oak Island Station after some assistance with help with a Thanksgiving dinner organization. And then from historic sites, a variety of different things from different sites. Historic Bath would like to acquire a door from the Swindell store, an important local business. Somerset Place are wanting to acquire a Bible from, that was given to Josiah Collins IV as a wedding present. Historic Edenton has a writing desk request. Historic Bath would like to add some oyster tongs. At Edenton, an admission ticket from the launching of the Liberty ship SS James Iredale, as well as a postcard showing the Iredale House in the front of the postcard, and a laundry tag from a local cleaners from 1947. And Duke Homestead has identified a spittoon to add to their collection that they feel would be a good addition. And Brunswick Town Fort Anderson, a bottle seal from William Dry III. And then the Transportation Museum has a sign from Barber Junction Depot, some additional posters from the Piedmont Airlines Gate poster series. And then the last item is a rail car from Norfolk Southern. This rail car was actually damaged in a fire recently, and the acquisition paperwork documents a little bit of the backstory. We are going to pursue an insurance claim for that damage, but in the process of this, they discovered that it wasn't owned by the state, but not accessioned by the commission. So added that to the list. I think, oh no, a couple more things. Transportation Museum also has some papers from the Brotherhood of Railway Clerks and some patent papers that represent some innovations in railroad safety and efficiency when electric trains came in. I think that's it. Yep, that's it for all the accessions.
Okay, would it be appropriate then if I hear a motion to accept the recommended accessions to the various museums?
This is Barbara Snowden. I make a motion that we accept the accessions.
Thank you, Commissioner Snowden. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. This vote then is to approve the recommended staff accessions to the various museums. Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
yes,
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips. Ms. Phillips, you're muted.
Maybe she could just do like this.
Yeah, that or that. Yeah, there we go. You only get one vote, Ms. Phillips. That was all last year. And David Ruffin, yes. Okay. So, Sarah, if you will, walk us through the accessions.
Sure.
Of
So-
the various items.
Okay, sure. Just few deaccessions from the Museum of History. And I would note that all of these deaccessions, the intent is that they be disposed of in an appropriate manner. None of them have value or worth to sell. And I think you can see that from the images and the descriptions as well. The first two are related to some beds. One is a bed that really has no North Carolina story associated with it, and it has been heavily damaged. And so that would be disposed of, as well as some bed parts that also are not in good shape, and even way back to the original accession record documents that some of the pieces may not be original and that the provenance is a little bit suspect. So some bed parts, as well as some items from a pharmacy collection, some methylborate paste, and some Peb Ammo toothpaste that, as you can tell, are also deteriorating and probably wouldn't be worth anything to sell, might even be slightly hazardous. So that's the proposal for those.
Yeah.
to be disposed of.
This is in no way going to be auctioned or turned for value. It's basically destruction, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Do I hear a motion to accept the deaccessions recommended by staff?
This is Susan Phillips. I'm back, and I so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. We
Gary
appreciate it.
Morrison will second.
And Mr. Morrison, second. All in favor, Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
yes,
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
and David Ruffin, yes. Okay, we have a separate specific item on the agenda that will require a specific action from us. So that Sarah, if you will move to discuss the artifacts from the DHHS, again, the Dix Hospital, to the City of Raleigh Museum.
Okay, sure. So as Chairman Ruffin said, there has been a request from the Department of Health and Human Services to deaccession some artifacts from their department from the Dix campus to the City of Raleigh Museum. And this is similar to an action that the commission approved in 2017. So they're coming back with some additional materials. And I would note that the department, the Office of Archives and History, Accessions Committee has reviewed all this, and nobody is fighting for any of these materials. So we are certainly fine with this move to deaccession these materials. None of them would be useful in our collection. And I'll just provide a summary. There was a long spreadsheet that detailed everything, but essentially there is a whole series of books from their medical library, their learning resource center, and their school of nursing library. I've actually seen those libraries before they left the campus, so I'm very familiar with what those look like. And older reference books, often detailing Dorothea Dix herself or the hospital or medical topics. Then there's a whole series of what I would call artistic pieces, artwork, 3D art, including birdhouses, popsicle stick art, paper art. A puzzle, there's some materials from the chapel, some pamphlets, some door signs, some skeleton keys and tags, some receipts, blank receipts from the guild from Dix, and then 5 sets of pajamas. So that's.
Do I hear a motion to approve the accessioning, which is in many ways a transfer over to the city of Raleigh as opposed to disposal, right? Is that a fair
Right,
way?
that's fair. They're being transferred. That's a method of disposal.
Yes. So do I hear a motion?
I so move that we accept the recommendations to transfer the accession, the materials from DHHS to Dorothea, to the City of Raleigh Museum.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Do I hear a second?
Susan
I will
Phillips.
second it.
Commissioner Phillips has seconded. We'll move to a vote. Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Dr. Denard,
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
David Ruffin, yes. Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. We'll now move to a brief summary. We feel this is important for all the work that the staff does over the entirety of the year to periodically to the commission. We've asked, due to the length of the agenda today, that they be brief summaries of the reports that have been submitted to each of us and are posted as materials for consideration for this meeting. And so at this point, we'll continue with Sarah, who's again Director of Division of Archives and Records, for her division's report.
Sure, thank you. So let me just begin by saying, though, that it has been a real pleasure these last couple months to work with our strong team at the Office of Archives and History. The pandemic really has not impacted their dedication and their professionalism, and that is reflected in the reports that you were sent and that they'll share today. It's really a team effort to forward our work at the Office of Archives and History, and I appreciate each of the divisions and their staff keeping me up to speed on background for issues that are pending. And I'd also like to note, before I talk about the archives work, that the department is hard at work planning the America 250th commemorative period. The pandemic did interrupt our planning somewhat, but we're now back up to speed, and we're adapting and incorporating some of the lessons that we've learned during the pandemic into our efforts, including how users now like to engage with our content online. So that's been very helpful to sort of take those lessons learned and update our plans. We're working towards a very robust statewide participation effort, and we hope soon to be able to launch a branding for the effort, a website, and I'm hoping we'll have a formal relationship with the National Commission announced when they send out their partnership agreement materials. And I'm also pleased that the General Assembly is taking interest in these efforts, as did the Governor's Office. They presented a budget that included funding requests for these efforts for America 250th, as well as support for capital projects at historic sites and some land acquisition partnerships. So we're off to a running start and look to hear more about that in the future. We're very excited. So turning very briefly to the Division of Archives and Records, I would draw your attention to a few of the selected highlights from my written report. I think my top one today is the impactful and phenomenal work of our records analysis unit in delivering training to state and local offices, to their colleagues in other states, and to national and professional associations. They have really, during the pandemic, transformed our training program, and they've harnessed their creativity and their innovation, and it's really made a difference, and it's been met with great success. So I'm very pleased with those efforts, and I would be remiss if I didn't put them top of my list. But I also like to say we've had a lot of great opportunities to do virtual programming with schools, with the public, and with the media. Our Transcribe NC crowdsourced transcription platform has really taken off in the last 6 months. It got a lot of media attention. The numbers of users just skyrocketed. So that's been a lot of fun. We're getting a lot of good work done with those volunteers on that site. I hope you also had the opportunity to go back to the report and look at the links I included for some of our recent social media campaigns. We had a lot of good work around Black History Month. And then in March, we've been doing a Lunch and Learn series with the State Library around some women's history topics. And finally, in grant news, our State Historical Records Advisory Board has just completed the development of 8 video tutorials to be posted to YouTube. And those are about the basic care and preservation of and access to historical records. So those will be available on demand. And they're setting up the groundwork to do 6 traveling archivist visits, hopefully, when we are allowed to travel again. We're going to start with some virtual pieces to that, but they're anticipating going out across the state to 6 selected cultural repositories to start that work. So that's been really exciting. We have a Council of Library and Information Resources grant to digitize some endangered Senate audio recordings. That's going along well, and those are being posted online. And finally, we have a NHPRC grant to increase access to our colonial court records. And that is close to wrapping up in the next few months. That will now bring all of our colonial and district superior court records from the earliest periods online. We'll have really robust descriptions of them online, finding aids, and we're digitizing selected materials from those collections for online access, as well as transcriptions in Transcribe NC. So that sounds really great. We're getting some good fruit from those grants. And I think I'll leave it at that to leave time for my fellow division directors to highlight their great work.
Thank you very much again, Sarah. Now we'll move back to Michelle Lanier, who is Director of the North Carolina Division of State Historic Sites and Properties, for her report.
Thank you, Chairman Ruffin. I want to, first of all, let you know something that I shared at our last meeting, which is I'm incredibly inspired by our staff, particularly because out of the Office of Archives and History, State Historic Site staff were among the first to do the brave, bold, and generous work of engaging with the general public during a pandemic, going back to late spring of 2020. So I started my New Year's message to them with, the words that it is certainly an understatement to say that last year offered more learning and growing opportunities than any of us anticipated. I reiterated our goals. We've actually had new folks join us during the pandemic, which is a very interesting time to join a public history family. So I reiterated our priorities, safety, and I added to that wellness of self and others, true inclusion, our comprehensive long-term approach to diversity, accessibility, equity, and inclusion at all levels, communication with colleagues, stakeholders, and guests that is clear, kind, consistent, streamlining procedures. We're always looking for simplicity in our bureaucratic dance and efficiency. And then lastly, but certainly not the least important, protecting our built environments. And we're also amplifying, protecting our collections, of course, our structures, and increasingly, we have been prioritizing our work to conserve historic landscapes, waterways, and protect the environments of historic flora and fauna. We have been really focusing in, as you can imagine, on our digital footprint, our digital messaging. We did receive CARES Act money through the North Carolina Humanities Council to launch something that we're called Healing on the Land, which is in some ways the little sister to Singing on the Land, which was extremely successful, has done very well. And Healing on the Land connects the dots between our historic landscapes, narratives around healing and history. And the grant also generously has offered up the opportunity to purchase new equipment, a variety of new equipment, including drone cameras, touch screen, iPads for some of our staff, as well as GoPro, all of these new pieces of equipment that help us to increase our digital humanities portfolios. And additionally, we're extremely proud that we were able to work with Governor Cooper's NC Connect program to support particularly rural communities in really addressing the digital divide. So many communities, people who are working, people who are in school, children have really struggled around needing to access digital communication tools during the pandemic. And through our Wi-Fi towers that were installed at every single state historic site, of course, honoring, working with Ramona Bartos' staff, the importance of making sure that we did not have any negative impacts on our historic structures. We were able to increase accessibility to Wi-Fi capabilities. The Elizabeth II, which is our replica ship at Roanoke Island Festival Park, has made its way out to for its maintenance. It's long overdue. I will not give you all of the background details on how hard it is to get a major ship of that size out for maintenance, but we did work towards success in that regard. We are not only seeing a great amount of innovation when it comes to digital humanities, but we have seen a great deal of success working with staff members like Kimberly Kandros and Lorraine Umfleet to really gain so much more funding than I think this division has ever seen in 1 year. Kimberly Kandros alone has worked to help us obtain $6 million in funding in just 3 years. And that's not all of it. We've also been working with Ramona Bartos' team for some opportunities that have grown in ways that none of us could have anticipated. I will also say that we're extremely excited about the governor's budget. It's looking really, really good for historic sites, particularly around so many of our structures that are in need of love. And then I will end here. We did have just recently, to commemorate Women's History Month, we had a sculptor to visit historic Halifax, a sculpture of Harriet Tubman to help us illuminate the story, particularly of women freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad. There are more details in my report on our next steps with true inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion being a big priority and a huge passion of mine. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Any questions? Again, thank you very much. It was also great to hear all of the cross support you're getting with different divisions, and good segue maybe to Ramona Bartos again, who is the director, as you know, of Historical Resources, and she will give us her report.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffin. I just want to again, thank everyone. It's such a pleasure to work with all of my colleagues, and we do get a lot accomplished, I think, for the state because we have such great collegiality between us. So my thanks to everyone. You've seen my report. I'll just give the highlights. We are very anxious in our division to get back out amongst the public. We're more in a teleworking mode still, but I think across both the private and public sectors, the question of how do we come back from this pandemic with teleworking now potentially an option for state employees in the future, that's going to be very interesting to see how we pivot back to something maybe not quite what we had before. And we have just as much clamor from our constituents for site visits, which we have been doing in a safe way, outside, et cetera. But we're really looking forward to getting back in the swing of things with that kind of thing. We have also embraced, because of this past year, more outreach through virtual means. And I want to highlight two of those efforts really quickly for you. One is the Office of State Archaeology, as you know, generally has an archaeology month down in the fall of the year. Well, they've decided to make it a feast throughout the entire year this year. And we're going to be calling, it's already called Submerged North Carolina. We're working with NOAA and their Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. And we're looking at North Carolina as an underwater museum as well as mariner memorial. And so shipwrecks are really going to be the focus here. So I invite you, we're going to have a digital lecture every month. We've already had a a couple, and they're just going to continue. This month we're doing shipwrecks in 3D, so it sounds like something that you would see on PBS. And so we're very excited about how many people have been tuning in to those as well. So in the future, we're going to hear more about nearshore archaeology, conservation of American Indian canoes, merchant mariners. The sky's really been the limit with what archaeology folks have come up with. So we hope you will participate with that. Another opportunity you have to interact with us virtually is through something that Dr. Joe Beatty, who's supervisor of our historical research office, has launched. And I think our colleague Michelle Lanier, she's been involved with this as well. We have started sort of a video podcast series to highlight both published works in the realm of books as well as articles that have appeared in the North Carolina Historical Review, and having interviews with authors. And I've given you a list of those, and they originally will appear on Facebook Live, so you can see those usually midday, and then they will turn into our YouTube channel. And if you haven't looked at our YouTube channel in a while, it's not just for our division, but the division, all the divisions in our department. It's really, I think it's better than some of our commercial offerings that you have to pay a subscription for each month. So please feel free to tune into those as well. We also have continued to have a lot of tax credit as well as National Register activity. Sometimes those go hand in hand. Sometimes people are seeking the National Register for the honorific of it, and we're always very excited for that purpose as well. And so we've had, interestingly, and I think Mr. Ruffin might remember this as well as Dr. Denard, Dr. Johnson, one of the most interesting ones we've had lately that is starting to come up through the National Register process. It was approved for the study list at our last meeting in February, is the Bunker Sink Farm in Surry County, which, if you recognize the name Bunker, that is the family of Chang and Ing Bunker, who were the conjoined twins that settled in North Carolina in the mid-19th century. And so this is Mr. Chang's house. His brother Ing's house was lost to us several decades ago. So we're interested to see that moving forward as well. We continue to work with our certified local government programs. We now have a new member of that network, and that is Swansboro. So they will be eligible for our small federal preservation grant program as well. And on a personal note, I just want to say I will be interacting with the US 250th Commission. I will be a member of the Task Force for Parks, Preservation, and Public Spaces, which is to promote the preservation and engagement of the public with those places as part of the US 250th. And the reason that I am being asked to serve on that is I was elected earlier this month to board presidency of the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers. So that'll be a 2-year term, and I'll get to promote North Carolina and learn from our friends in other states as well. So I welcome any questions as well and appreciate everyone's attention.
Well, congratulations, Ramona. They couldn't have a better member, and we couldn't have a better representative. So that's a great honor, and congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I say congratulations as well. David Denard.
Thank you, Dr. Denard.
So obviously, not last, but certainly not least, would be Ken Howard, of course, who is the director of the Division of Museums of History, of the Museum of History. So, Mr. Howard, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you very much for your time today. I think you will see my report has a lot of information about what all of our museums are doing. I'll just hit a few of the highlights and keep it quick. Of course, the governor's budget was a pleasant surprise yesterday. The big thing in the governor's budget was our Graveyard of the Atlantic exhibit. We've been planning a permanent exhibit there for, good gosh, almost 10 years now. And it finally made it into the budget. And I was speaking with the county manager for Dare County yesterday, and they're anxious to also contribute to the cause down there. So we're hoping that that part of the budget will pass, and we'll be able to build a really great exhibit at the Graveyard of the Atlantic Museum in Hatteras. That has been our third most visited museum in the entire division. And last year, over 90,000 people, or the year before. Last year, though, they and the museum in Beaufort were still very busy. As soon as the museums reopened in September, lots of people were staying at the beaches. And so they had some great visitation. In addition to that, in the Maritime Museum in Beaufort, the Maritime Heritage Foundation is also in the governor's budget for a grant of $1.5 million for planning funds to start planning a new Maritime Education Center on the Gallants Channel property, and eventually a new museum down there as well. So we're very excited about that. The Museum of History is in the budget, not for as much as we would like, but we are in there for $6 million in planning money to finish out our construction drawings for the expansion of our current building. And we're in the bond for about $54 million, which unfortunately is not what it's going to take, but it is a good start. From an exhibit standpoint, again, all the museums are working on new exhibits. Our big exhibit is going to be Answering the Call, which Sarah had mentioned briefly before. That exhibit, those of you who call our World War I exhibit where we built trenches, we are repurposing our trenches and creating an exhibit on North Carolina's military history from the Spanish-American War up through World War I. As part of our expansion project, the museum will continue that exhibit through Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, Afghanistan. We are also partnering and working with the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. They are creating a Hall of Fame that they are calling a Hall of First to recognize North Carolina's military veterans, and we're going to be including that as part of our exhibit. They're just getting their project off the ground, so it may be a few months before we have it all put together, but that will become part of our Answering the Call exhibit. In addition to that, we're doing lots and lots of virtual classes, not only for our students across the state, but also virtual lectures. Our History at High Noons have been very popular. Our History in Highballs and all the other evening lectures we've been having. We just did a great lecture with the Society of Cincinnati in February, all about the real revolution and how it's pertaining today. So that was great. And again, we are also looking at increasing the occupancy of our museums. As you know, the governor came out and relaxed the occupancy rules to go to 100%. We think that's a little bit high for our museum because our occupancy is at 100% is 1,000 people. And that's way too many when you think about continuing the 6-foot rule of keeping your distance. So we're going to go from 250 people at the museum in Raleigh up to 300 and be at about 30% occupancy and see how things go in our galleries. Visitation is up at all the museums. It's not where we would like it to be, but we've gone from 6,000 visitors in January at the Museum of History to a little over 7,000 in February. And as of the third week in March, we had over 6,000 visitors to date at the museum in Raleigh. So we're seeing a gradual uptick. Of course, this compares to last year where we had 30,000 visitors in January and 28,000 visitors in February. So obviously we've got a long way to go, but people are coming back and we're excited to see that. We do have some open positions at the museum. We are currently looking for a deputy director for the museum and the division of museums. We're looking for a design director or a director of exhibitions, and also a couple of curators and a grant writer. So if you guys have any good candidates, please let us know, because these are positions that definitely need to be filled, especially as we begin to prepare for new exhibits in the expansion. All the exhibits in the museum will change in the expansion. The Story of North Carolina exhibit will get much larger, as well as all of our exhibits will get much larger. So we are beginning to work with our architects starting this month to start looking at some exhibit design firms to help us prepare for that expansion of all of our exhibits. So those are the things that are going on. Again, lots of great things happening at our museums, and we hope you'll come by and see us. The Answering the Call exhibit opens on April the 6th. And then in May, we're going to open an exhibit on North Carolina's variety vacation land called Are We There Yet? And all about the variety vacation land campaign that North Carolina put on between the 1930s and the 1970s. So those are some of the great things we've got going on. And again, I hope you all will come see us when you get a chance.
You know, Ken, I think you would agree with this. Most of us on this call may tend to fixate on the purity of the historical museum concept and preserving history and interpreting history. But, you know, there's a huge correlation to tourism and commerce relative to this. So I hope that's understood and frankly, for those of us, explained to our friends and neighbors.
Ken, I just wanted to mention one thing, that American Revolution lecture. It says that there were over 350 people from multiple states that were signed on, but that doesn't include the number of people who gathered to watch it together. So I was in a group of 10 or 12 that watched it, and they were from all over the country, and it was a very, very well-received lecture. I mean, tremendous outreach by our North Carolina Museum of History.
Thanks, Perry. Yeah, we partnered with the society, as you know, and not only did we get the North Carolina Society, but we had several of the other state societies had people sign on as well. When we register for the event, we take that number and increase it by about 25% to be conservative, because most people are watching it with someone else. We are reaching across the country. A lot of our virtual lectures have reached 25, 30 states. Last night, we did a lecture from David Feigenbaum on chasing the cure. He's a young physician who had an incurable disease, and he was able to do research and find a way to put his disease in remission. And we had somebody from New Zealand who actually watched that program last night. So its virtual program has been great. It has allowed us to reach a lot more people. Our virtual festivals this year, the African American Festival and the American Indian Heritage Celebration, reached more people than they would normally do when we had it in our building. So next year, we hope we'll be back in the building for our in-house festivals, but everything we do will continue to also broadcast virtually, because again, it just allows us to reach so many more people and take the story of North Carolina out beyond the borders of our state.
And may I just add that 2 of your new employees have been really doing amazing outreach into the community. Crystal Regan with her community classroom has been wonderful. And she even invited me to talk about Ella Baker and Shaw University. And that was a really good conversation and got a lot of alumni in the area interested. And then we got calls from all over the country, because people were excited to see something about Shaw and SNCC, and Reverend David Forbes was on that. And then Allison Fooley, if I'm saying her name right.
That's right.
Stepped into the big shoes of Emily Grant, and has also done wonderfully with the 2 festival cultural celebrations. And I just wanted to lift them up, because they just came in the middle of this pandemic and have been doing great work.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Yes, Crystal Regan is our new head of education, has a great education background. She taught history. She was an assistant principal at schools and a head of social studies for some of the schools. And she has come in and just brought some great energy and some great things. The community class program has been very successful, and we look to be continuing that into next year. So thank you for participating in that. We appreciate that. But yes, we've got some really great things going on, and our staff is really doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ken, and thanks to all the division heads, directors, for the great work that you do. And, we felt it was quite important as a commission to hear summaries of this, and just, again, want you to know how much we're proud of all this work, and particularly given the challenges you faced during the last year.
Thank you.
Chairman Ruffin, I have a question. Because I'm not sure how it's situated, but the African American Heritage Commission usually presents with us, do they not?
I believe. Do you want me to answer? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sure. They sometimes present. I think they've given periodic updates. They do have their own commission, as you know, that oversee them. So if you'd like a report, I think we could certainly schedule that for the next meeting. That is no problem.
I think we should, because there's a lot of cross-fertilization and really great work that Angela Thorpe and her team have done, and it's grown. So I think we should really be able to hear from them our next meeting. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Okay, any additional comments before we move on to the other items on the agenda? Okay, well, we have 2 items that I have asked the Deputy Attorney General and our General Counsel on all things litigation relative to these matters, Karen Blum, to join us. I've asked her to provide some context initially with just some kind of factual description of where we are. One of which is the Pasco Confederate soldier monument issue, has frankly moved now to litigation because of our November 23rd, or as a result of our November 23rd action that we took as a commission to decline any response or granting of relief, if you will. And I do feel like it's important for Ms. Blum to give us some context of where we need to go with these two matters before us. And I'd ask that we hold our questions until she has provided her introductory summary, if that is a fair expectation. Ms.
Thank
Blum.
you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission. Again, I have two summaries. I think the first one up is for a new petition you haven't seen yet. That's the Zebulon Vance petition. And the second one is on the Pasco County monument. And again, if you would just hold your questions until I've gotten through both of those summaries, I would appreciate it. And again, I'm just giving factual summaries of what is either in the petition or in the Historical Commission's response. So first up, in February of this year, DNCR received a petition to preserve historic artifact related to the Zebulon Vance Monument in Asheville. And it requested assistance from the Historical Commission in preserving the monument under two statutes, the first being 143B-62, and that is one of the Historical Commission's creation powers and duties statutes, and also under 100-2.1, which, as you may recall, is the statute for the protection of monuments, memorials, and works of art. For this petition, the petitioner is the Society for the Historical Preservation of the 26th North Carolina Troops, which I will refer to as the 26th North Carolina. The monument in question is in Pack Square in Asheville. It is owned by the city of Asheville and it stands on public property there. The Buncombe County Commission and I believe the Asheville City Council voted to remove the monument. The petition has jurisdictional allegations. The first is under 143B-62, which requires the Historical Commission to provide aid to organizations in the interest of historical preservation. And the second jurisdictional allegation is under 100-2.1, which prohibits objects of remembrance from being permanently removed. Petitioners, the 26th North Carolina, also allege standing, and they state that the 26th North Carolina has standing as an organization seeking the Historical Commission's aid in preserving the monument. And also the 26th North Carolina restored that monument in 2015 under a contract with the city of Asheville. Petitioners in that case are asking the commission to hear the petition at the next meeting, which would be this meeting, or schedule a special meeting, if appropriate, to allow them to brief the matter or present it oral argument. And they are requesting that the commission enter an order requiring the Vance Monument to remain in Pack Square. So that is the petition that is just coming in that you haven't seen before. And I'll move now to just a factual summary of what has happened regarding the Pasco County Confederate Soldiers Monument in Elizabeth City, which you may recall the Historical Commission declined to hear. And I think it was December of last year. So in that matter, there is an appeal of the Historical Commission's decision not to hear the matter regarding that monument. The petitioners, and this is in case you've forgotten, the petitioners are a state chapter and one local chapter of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Before the commission heard that matter, DNCR had denied the petition for declaratory ruling regarding the applicability of 100-2.1, which you may recall was addressed to DNCR, but it requested relief from the Historical Commission, and DNCR forwarded the matter to the Historical Commission to act on or not act on. And again, the Historical Commission declined to hear the matter because it determined that the petitioners were not aggrieved. So where we are now is the petitioners have appealed and they filed a petition for judicial review and a request for a declaratory order in Superior Court, and that would be Pasco County Superior Court. And they are seeking relief. They are asking the court to reverse and remand the denial of the request for declaratory ruling before the Historical Commission, and also to enter a declaratory order that the county board and city needed the Historical Commission's approval. Well, the county board needed the Historical Commission's approval before acting. On behalf of the Historical Commission, I filed motions to dismiss under the Administrative Procedure Act and the North Carolina Rules of Civil Procedure in the Superior Court, and also responded to the petition. I anticipate this petition will be heard in June in Dare County due to scheduling conflicts between the attorney who represents the two SCV groups. So that is an update on where we are now in two of the matters regarding Confederate monuments.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Sam Dixon. I move that we go into closed session under the open meetings law to consult with our attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege and receive legal advice on the merits of handling the petition for judicial review and request for declaratory order filed in Superior Court about the Pasco County Confederate Soldiers Monument, and 2, the petition to preserve the Zebulon Vance Monument in Asheville. And I'll put that in the form of a motion.
And I second. This is Valerie Ann Johnson.
Through Commissioner Dixon's motion and Dr. Johnson's second, do I hear any discussion of moving into closed session? Okay, we will, on the vote on that motion is Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Dr. Denard.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Bryan.
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds.
Yes.
Ms. Snowden.
Yes.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
David Ruffin. Yes. So the motion carries, and this meeting of the North Carolina Historical Commission will be closed in closed session pursuant to the North Carolina Statute Section 143-318 .11 Section A, Subsection 3, to consult our attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege and receive legal advice on the merits and handling of, as Commissioner Dixon said, 1, the petition for judicial review and request for declaratory order filed in Superior Court about the Pasco Confederate Soldiers Monument, and 2, the petition to preserve the Zebulon Vance Monument in Pack Square in Asheville. Having voted to move into closed session, I am at this point going to ask our IT support with Greg, with the department, to join us to be absolutely sure that we are able as commissioners to move into a closed session. And then once that process is finished with the Q&A, if you will, with our legal counsel, that we move back into open session appropriately and as efficiently as we can.
Okay, I will take the stream into a pause mode right this second. Okay, you're live now.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now resume the open session of the North Carolina Historical Commission. Do I hear any discussion about our actions concerning the Zeb Vance monument? As again, as we understand it, there are two requests, if you will, for a position or relief from the Historical Commission.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Denard. The legal scholars can perhaps frame it, but I think it would be in our best interest to decline any attempt to provide legal relief. We simply do not have the authority to provide the relief that the petitioners request.
Dr. Darr, may I try to formulate a motion?
Okay.
Motion to deny consideration of the petition to preserve the Zebulon Vance monument, relying on our understanding that NCGS section 100-2.1 does not grant us the authority to take any action with respect to monuments on property not owned by the state of North Carolina.
Sounds excellent to me.
Do I hear
I'll second your motion.
Do I?
Dr. Denard's motion.
Dr. Denard made the motion and Commissioner Morrison seconded with appropriate terminology. Is there any discussion? Is the intent for the motion, Commissioner Morrison, to address both of these issues within that same motion?
Well, now, my understanding was we didn't need to take any action with respect to Pasco tank because we took it.
No. I'm talking about the two requests for action or relief from the Zeb Vance.
You mean under the two different statutes?
Yes, the two different statutes.
Yes, I will also include, is it 143B-51? So do you want me to restate that motion?
Please.
Is it 51 or 62?
All right, maybe 62.
I thought it was 62.
I think it's 62.
All right.
I'm looking at the
143B-62. All right. The motion is motion to deny consideration of the petition to preserve the Zebulon Vance monument, relying on our understanding that NCGS section 100-2.1 and 143B-62 do not grant us the authority to take any action with respect to monuments on property not owned by the state of North Carolina.
And you have seconded that.
For clarity, that motion to me sounds like it comes from Commissioner Morrison. To ascribe it to Dr. Denard, I think is confusing.
Well, I have no objection to that.
That is.
I was simply stating my view, and simply since Attorney Morris framed it and put it form of a motion, I back away and accept that.
Would you
so
then
it can be a motion
Dr.
coming
Denard?
from Commissioner Morrison.
Commissioner Morrison has made the motion. Commissioner Denard has seconded it. Do I hear discussion?
I think the motion covers my understanding of what the commission is able to do. Thank you.
This is Susan Phillips. I'm trying to use the raise my hand icon, but I don't know if it's working or not. I could very well be wrong, but it appears to me that the first statute that we were discussing, the reason that the first statute, the 102, does not apply is because this monument is not on property owned by the state of North Carolina. The reason that I would myself would vote to deny the petition because the relief that is requested under statute 143B-62, and that the historical commission order the Buncombe County, I think is Asheville County, to that we order unnamed persons to maintain the monument in place is not within our legal authority. So they're two slightly different legal grounds. I just think we don't have the authority to make decisions based on property that is not owned by the state. And we're not in a legal position to grant the relief requested by the plaintiff because we cannot order Buncombe County or any private citizen to maintain we can't order them to do anything. We don't have that kind of power to order the county to maintain the monument.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. Well said in terms of the distinctions, I think, between the two. Are we comfortable still proceeding to vote on the one motion that encompasses the two?
I would just say that under the discussion that we've just had would clarify the record so that we could just say in our motion that we do not have the authority under North Carolina statutes to grant the relief that the petitioner is requesting. But I leave that to Mr. Morrison if he thinks that aptly states his motion.
I'm wondering if we change the language subtly. I'm just picking up the part where it says relying on our understanding that NCGS 100-2.1 and then have a comma and then says even in consideration of 143B-62 comma does not grant us the authority to take any action, etc., unless they're on state property. I'm just struggling with how to rephrase it to adopt your line of thinking.
I might just say, state the motion as you stated, and then just add, moreover, under section 143B-62, the commission has no authority to grant the relief requested by the petitioner. Because clearly under the statute, well, I'll just leave it at that. We don't have the power to order the Buncombe County Commission to do anything.
And do you want me to delete the earlier reference to 143B-62? Can I just read?
Please.
Reread based on what I think is your friendly amendment. Motion to deny consideration of the petition to preserve the Zebulon Vance Monument, comma, relying on our understanding that NCGS section 100-2.1 does not grant us the authority to take any action with respect to monuments on property not owned by the state of North Carolina, semicolon, moreover, comma, under section 143B-62, the North Carolina Historical Commission has no authority to grant the relief requested by the petitioner.
I think that's perfect.
Yes.
And if that's your motion, I will second it.
Well, and I guess Dr. Denard and I will accept your friendly amendment.
Yeah.
That way we don't have to have a dueling motion.
Yeah, as amended. Is there any further discussion? Not hearing any. I'm sorry, Dr.
Mr. Chair, as long as we are clear, all of us, if we're clear, that regardless of the statute that you reference, we do not have the authority to grant the relief that the petitioners ask. And what I fear that if we go into too many details and add too much, we may provide an opportunity here to create some case law, which we do not want to do, I don't think. We just want to say, at this point, we hear what you're saying, but we cannot provide the relief that you seek. We do not have the authority to do that, period.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Any other discussion or comments? Not hearing any, I call for a vote. Then Dr. Denard, all in favor?
Yes.
Dr. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Bryan,
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes.
Ms. Snowden,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes. David
David Ruffin, yes. Thank you very much. And we will move to the last item on the agenda, which is basically the chair's announcements. I have three. One is the Milli Barber resolution. As we learned today, I believe that the governor's office has made that official and is now on its way to officialdom, if you will. I know that was an issue that we had worked on as a commission to truly honor Milli Barber's incredible service to not only this commission, but to the state of North Carolina and all things history in North Carolina. So that has been now official as a resolution from the governor's office. And also I wanted to make a comment about something that arguably could be construed as clearly ongoing business. And I'd like to apprise the commission of where we are on the subcommittee appointed by the chair on September 3rd, 2020, and charged with hearing recommendations of the ultimate disposition of the 3 Confederate memorials or monuments on Union Square, those recommendations from the staff, which of course were removed by the governor during the unrest in June of 2020. Due to the resignation of Dr. Kevin Cherry, and with his critical role in coordinating staff research in this matter, the chair has deemed it important to wait until a permanent replacement of the Deputy Secretary, Dr. Cherry, is in place before convening this subcommittee of the commission. However, in that vein, I'd like to take a moment of the chair's privilege, if I could, on this matter and share 2 points. And this somewhat resonates with my comments and statement of August 25th, 2018, relative to the study committee's recommendations on the Union Square monuments. Number one, as has been alluded to in the motion just approved, I think the North Carolina Historical Commission performs primarily an advisory role and is not a general court of justice, and thereby not an appropriate adjudicator of all things to monuments. Specifically, we're limited to dispositions, as has been indicated a moment ago, or on for monuments on state owned property or state-owned monuments, and not inclusive of those owned and managed by local governments. Secondly, I would like to say that the North Carolina Historical Commission should not be seen by elected officials as a forum for deciding all issues that they themselves have difficulty in solving. In that spirit, we request very specific recommendations by the department and its staff on the disposition of these three monuments as we consider convening our subcommittee as soon as practical upon the permanent replacement of Dr. Cherry. The third and last point is that I do want to remind all commissioners to be sensitive to and observe the deadline of April the 15th on submitting our annual to the Ethics Commission of North Carolina, the annual financial report relative to our potential conflicts of interest or what have you. And that comes to you, I believe, April 15th of this year. So having said that, are there any other items that we need to discuss today? Hearing none, do I hear any motion for adjournment?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
A motion by Commissioner Snowden, and I believe it was Commissioner Reynolds, right? The second? I'm not sure. Who seconded that?
I second it.
Oh,
Denard.
Dr. Denard, okay. Then Dr. Denard, all in favor of adjournment? Dr. Denard?
Yes.
Dr.
Yes.
Johnson? Dr. Johnson, yes.
Yes.
Ms. Bryan?
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Snowden?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
And David Ruffin, yes. Well, again, thank you all. Thank again the staff. Thank each and every one of you for your good work. And we will likely be meeting at some point, as Dr. Crow alluded to, in our work to secure a permanent replacement for Dr. Cherry. And that's probably going to happen more than once before our established meeting on June 23rd, our next scheduled Historical Commission meeting. And nothing else. Again, thank you so much, and stay well and healthy.
Everybody have a
Thank
happy
you, you too.
Easter.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.